spoken word artist, a radio presenter, and a producer. He is currently with the ZFM, Zimbabwe's #1 commercial radio station, and is the founder of Intentionally Daring, a creative content house. And last but not least, we have Vuyo Brown, who is an award-winning contemporary gospel artist from Bulawayo, Zimbabwe. She is known for the hit song Tulawazi, which broke radio chart records in Zimbabwe and made a massive impact across Africa. So panelists, here's how today is going to work. Yes, I do have questions for each panelist. However, if you feel as though there's something that a panelist has said that resonates with you, or that you would like to add, your voice to it, please feel free, even though the question is directed at them, feel free to put in your own input and talk where you see fit. This is a conversation, it's not an interview. So let's have a conversation with each other. See these questions as guidelines to your answers, but don't feel restricted to them in any way. So I'm going to start with you, Luco, and I mean you're now you're working for Impact Radio, and I think this is a question that I actually want to ask to all the panelists as the first question. When was that moment in your life, in your career life, where you felt you had made it, or you felt, or have you felt like you have made it? When was that point in your career, that pivotal moment where you achieved something, or you got to a specific place in your job where you thought, I've made it? So I'm gonna go, Luco, if you could answer that first.
Oh. All right. Hi everyone. My name is Luco, like she said. I want to get this clear first. Is this in my radio career specifically, or just generally as a speaker?
As a speaker and a creative.
All right. So I think, how many years ago was it now already? Oh, by the way, I've been in radio for 10 years, and within that, I think only about 6 years ago did I get into events coordination and MC work. I think it was a season for me around about 2016, 2017, where I had an opportunity probably up until 2019 when I moved to Pretoria. Because back then I was in East London, and I think that was a peak of my speaking career. I did a lot of corporate work with Mercedes-Benz. I did a lot of events for Mercedes-Benz, and that was through obviously my work at Link FM, which is a Christian radio station based in East London. So I did a lot of that, and 2018 was my first Caltex relationship gig. And I had the pleasure of doing that. So for me, it was at that point, I think between 2016 to 19 has got to have been my peak, the peak of my career, be it in radio, be it in music, be it in MC work. That was my season, 2016 to 2019. That was definitely it.
Thank you so much for that, Luca. I'm going to move over to Arnold, if you could answer that as well.
So it's December the 3rd, 2011.
Wow.
I'm at the Book Cafe. At the time, it's still by 5th Avenue, upstairs. So 5th Avenue is literally in the CBD, but in the avenues area. It's very residential. And there's like a series of block flats. And from those block of flats, there's like a shopping center. And up there was this artist hub. Now, if you're an artist at the time, that's like the safe haven to go and practice and be a creative, because you're bumping shoulders with like a lot of amazing people. December the 3rd, 2011, the November before that, I'd gone to that poetry slam and bombed. The December poetry slam, I go there and I win my first poetry slam. But it's not the winning that made me feel like I had made it. It's the moment where someone in the crowd who I didn't know, who had no connection to my background, who had never seen me, who had never appreciated what I do, comes to me and say, man, that was good. Or someone came through and said, you touched me in a special way that I've never been touched before with this art form. I note that moment as the moment I knew I had made it, because everything else follows after that, is a ripple effect of that. Is a ripple effect of me finding my voice, because that's what it meant for me. Because all along, we all start because we want to be like someone. So we start because we want to be like that rapper. We want to be like that spoken word artist. But winning that poetry slam, going 3 rounds and beating everyone was me confirming that I'd found my voice, aka finding my purpose. And everything else meant I just needed to be excellent, to continue to be excellent within that field for it to happen. So then that's where the radio comes from. That's where performing in the Netherlands or in Europe comes from. That's where getting called to be part of this platform comes from. Is that specific moment? Because if that moment didn't happen, maybe I would have quit and thought that it doesn't work. But from that moment, it's then the ripple effect that says you can do this. So that's when I knew I had made it. The making it metaphorically is in the you found your voice. Now be consistent, be excellent at it, and continue being excellent. And you're gonna get to the summit of whatever God has designed as a journey for me. So I'm gonna note that as the day I knew I had made it.
Thank you so much, Arnold. I wanted to say it's so profound. And you know, your name really does speak for itself, because that was truly profound. It's people say, and this is really important, that what you say is important, but what's even more important is how you make people feel. And I think that's why that became a defining moment for you, because it was how you made someone feel. And that's what resonated, and that's what stuck with you. I'm going to move over to Vuyo, if you could also just answer that question.
Right. So I think, I don't know if you can hear me.
Yes.
So mine is similar to So Profound's, because it's, I haven't made it, but I have had a preview of the many times that I'll probably feel that. And that will be the whole of 2020. I can't even put it into one day or like 1 month, but all of it, because it was because of a song that I wrote with an intention, and it was me. You know, I'd written songs before, I'd performed before, but for this one, I had the guts to go, okay, I don't care how people are going to view this or what people are going to say about these notes, these ad libs. I'm going to do what I'm feeling in this song, and I'm going to write it in a certain way. It's not going to make sense, because the song, of the way I structured it, so many things about it that just were not, well, in my circle, were not normal or ordinary or expected. So I did that, and with an intention for it to go out and do something. I sent it out to do something, and it went and did that. And so for me, that became the preview of making it, because it was in line with why I do this in the first place. And every single time somebody, of course, there were so many wins as well, but every single time somebody would text me, call me, DM me, get in touch with me in tears, or, you know, sad, or going through whatever they're going through, because my song either made them feel a certain way or healed them, you know, that became the it for me. And so that was the preview, because every single time that anything I do, even if it's not music, goes and does that, then I have made it, because that's what I'm supposed to do. So, you know, mine is short like that, because like I say, it's So Profound, it's so similar to mine, but that was mine, the whole of 2020, literally, because God had already said it the year before, and he said the whole of 2020 is going to be that. I didn't know what he was talking about, but then I saw it. That's making it.
Thank you so much for that, Vuyo. What I'm hearing is that, especially as creatives who are working, working for God, it is not necessarily an achievement that makes us, but rather stepping into your purpose, realizing what it is that you've been called to do on this earth. Once you realize that purpose, it almost feels as though at that moment, I can now start stepping into these, these platforms, these made it ideas that I'd like to achieve in life. But first and foremost is finding a purpose. And I know a lot of Christians struggle with that concept, because they just feel like, what was I placed on this earth to do? And it starts with what you're passionate about. Like So Profound and Vuyo said, if you're passionate about, leaving people with a feeling, if you're passionate about impacting lives, whatever it is that you're passionate about, putting passion and purpose together at that moment, that's what you can call making it. So my next question goes to you, Luko. Is there, as creatives, especially in the radio industry, and I know this because I'm trying to get into that industry currently, it's hard. There's a lot of competition. There's a lot of individuals who are trying to get in, and you almost feel as though you have to constantly perform at 150% just to stay where you currently are, because there's this idea of, if anything happens, I can be replaced. And so throughout your career, have you ever felt so much pressure, or was there ever a moment where you just thought, you know what, this is it, I'm not doing it anymore? Or what is a challenge that you would say really impacted you in your career?
Thank you for that question. Let me start by saying you used our tagline, impacting lives. That's Impact Radio's tagline, impacting lives. But I have to say, and I think this actually goes right across the floor with any other, and I usually say this to the new guys. If you come in and we celebrate you and you're the big deal, you must know that the in the art space, there are seasons. And I want you to be as versatile as possible, because if you are the it right now as a broadcaster or as a news reader, you're the best at the moment. It's not that you're going to change, but a new sound will come, not necessarily to replace you, but each person comes and are celebrated in their season. And so I never want this mentality of, I've changed or I'm no longer relevant. But I want to believe that each person has their season. And I think it's pretty much the same in music as well. That if you have just broken into the scene and everybody's celebrating you, in a couple of months' time, in a year's time, there is a new sound that's going to come. Could even probably be similar to yours, but that person in that season will be celebrated. And so I am not much of a fan of saying, look, it's going to change. It will change. That's the truth. And hence I say, try and be as versatile as possible so that nobody can emulate your sound. And I think I deal with this a lot when I deal with demos. I don't want you to sound like Luko. I don't want you to sound like So Profound. I want you to sound yourself, so that when Elma comes, she sounds like herself, and that's absolutely okay. And so for me, it's really all about being versatile, but more than anything, finding, and I think one of our panelists said this, find your voice and stick to it.
Yeah. Thank you so much for that, Luko. Like Godfrey said, the nuggets are really, really being dropped here. And everything that was said has so much relevance, especially, like you said, not just to creatives, but to musicians. And there is this constant pressure to stay relevant 24/7. And like you said, there are seasons. And, even if you are trending or whatever it needs to be for 2 hours and you impact that one life that God wanted you to impact, you have, gone through your season of impact. And so my next question is to you, Arnold. Being a spoken word artist, there's also a lot of pressure that comes into that, because there's this idea of, spoken word artists have to be deep all the time. You have to be able to turn a conversation into something that's deep and that people can click to. And so there's this pressure of having to always keep up this facade. So what is the one piece of advice that you wish you knew before you stepped into being a spoken word artist as well as a presenter?
Well, really, in any form of performing arts, where you are performing for a crowd, one person, whether you're a teacher, you're a ballerina, you are a radio host behind a microphone, or you are a president giving a speech, you're performing, the goal is to connect. When I started, the emphasis was on how great of a writer I was. How great I could write, which was great. It was more on the content, focus on the content, which was great. So I spent a lot of time perfecting the art of writing, until one day we are at an event. There's this friend of mine is called Madzitati Guru, fellow poet. He's just a brilliant mind. He goes on stage, he kills it. Like literally, the crowd goes bananas over this guy. I go on stage and I get a lukewarm reception, and I start to study what is it about him that makes him what people love about him. It was so simple. He connected with people at the point of their need, because whoever is listening to you has a need, and them responding to you is just a sign that you have met their need. Their need could be imagination, their need could be healing, that need could be laughter. It's an emotional response. That's what it is. So I wish someone had told me that the goal is to connect. That's what it is. That's why Jesus told stories. That's why he told parables. Parables, in the most basic sense, is an earthly story with a heavenly meaning. Why was he telling earthly stories? So that people can connect to his truth, to the truth he wanted to pass on. So I spend more time trying to be the most prolific writer. And funny enough, if you research my earlier work, I was a very complex guy, very intellectual, very conceptual, and there's nothing wrong with that. I love it. I love that person. But when I discovered that the goal was to connect, because once you connect with someone, they then allow you to speak to them. You then deposit whatever the content is, right?
Yeah.
And that's what I wish I would have known earlier. And later on in my life, the same lesson would come full circle, whether it's creating a campaign or whether it's being on the radio, right? I was having a funny story. So the person who taught me radio, who's Delani Makarulima, who was like the production manager at the time, and literally I became his minion at the time, trying to soak up everything I can. Such a radio mind, just downloaded the whole media machine onto me. Brilliant person. But his way of executing radio was all about the voice, right? It was all about how great your voice is, how great your links are, how great you can flow, and how great you can execute a link. So the early days when I started radio, I was trying so hard to be that, right?
Yeah.
Until I discovered that no, people listen because they want to connect to something. So what's the best way for them to connect to me? I started sharing from a very personal space. I started telling personal stories. I started not trying to chase an immaculate voice. I started sounding like a real human being, started sounding like Arnold. And before you know it, people connected. And just like that, right? So it was the same lesson just coming again. And the first time I was trying so hard to be like such a profound writer and all these things, when all I needed to do was find ways in which to connect. And one last thing, when the goal is to connect, you get over yourself. When your goal is to connect, you focus more on the person you're trying to connect with.
Yes.
Right? It's no longer about you. So I started to focus more on who I was performing for, why I was performing for them, why I wanted to connect with them. I started focusing on the why. It's like being on the radio. So it stopped being about how great my links are and how tight they are and how flowing I am or how my voice is. It started being about how can I really talk to this person? How can I make them feel better? And it stopped being about me. And the more I stopped focusing on myself, my links started to sound so dope because they started to connect. So I wish I knew that before I started.
Thank you so much for that, Arnold. I'm going to hand over to Luco because she has a comment that she'd like to give. But I'd also just like to say connection is actually the basis of winning souls. A lot of the times we forget that our main purpose is to connect with people, because like you said, before someone will allow you to speak into their lives, they need to have some form of a connection with you. It's not just a Q&A session where I'm going to tell you about this and then I'm going to leave. There needs to be that connection there because we need to be on the same wavelength. Yes, Luco, go ahead.
Right. I just wanted to touch on something that Arnold actually spoke about, and on a general sense, connection is really important. But he made mention of the voice, and I have to tell you, especially if you're looking to go into impact, your demo lens with me, and I listened to it. There is nothing as disturbing as a voice that sounds like a voice you've heard before. There, for me, if you want to sound like somebody on a particular radio platform, then if I'm tuning in, I want to go exactly where I want to go, and not to you because you sound like them. I know who I want to listen to. And so exactly what he's saying, authenticity is so important, because if I'm listening to you, Alma, that's who I want to listen to. And again, he's making mention of how it's really about the listener, it's not about you. You'll be having the worst day. And I have to say, for me, it's got to be one of the most difficult things I've had to deal with in my life. I remember a year where I was still doing sport presenting. I just lost my niece, got a call to say she's passed on. I had to go on air. Within the next 10 minutes. And I held one principle that said, right now it's about the one listening on the airwaves. And especially when you get to do a show and build content and encourage and motivate people, you forget about yourself. You begin to speak life to people, switch off that microphone and begin to cry. But at that moment, when you go on air, it's all about your listener, never about you. So thank you so much for touching on that, Arnold.
Chills, absolute chills. Thank you so much, Luco. I've got absolutely nothing to add to that. You nailed the pin on the head. Hey, Agnes, but you touched, you did what you needed to do. And thank you for that point. I'm gonna just move on quickly to Vuyo. As a musician, as an artist in the 21st century, I also know that there's a lot of pressure that comes with it. Creating new music. I have friends who are artists and they're just constantly creating, trying to keep up with the waves, trying to implement what's going on in the world in their different songs. And so, Vuyo, my question to you would be, what advice would you give upcoming artists in being able to be yourself throughout your journey as an artist, because the pressures from the outside world are immense? So what advice would you give to artists to be you and remain you throughout your journey?
I think the first thing that would have to be like number one, because I have these things that I keep on my wall, right? And that's my vision. So I write them down because I tend to forget. So the reason why sometimes, all these pressures can come in or seep in into our minds and then drag us down is because we forget. So I think it's very important that you have, I believe very much in writing things down. So have the vision written down. Habakkuk, is that Habakkuk 2, right? It's important. The reason why God highlighted there is because it's very important that you write it down, because you can forget. So many things happen that will make you forget the vision, whether it's from God or it's just you, wherever it came from. So it's important that you write it down. And so remembering that, as an artist, as a musician, you kind of have to keep with the times and stay relevant, yes. But then having something to go back to and be like, recently I've had to go through this and have had to go back to, okay, why am I doing this in the first place? Because I get so many offers to do so many songs with so many people. And I constantly have to go back to the vision and go, okay, not just does this align with why I'm doing this, but also to just remember, why am I doing this? Because it's so easy to be like, okay, I need to, get into this market. I need to be known by these people. I need to be, okay, I haven't released something in a while. The radio is still going. Music is still being, put out. They're not saying my name anymore. I need, to be relevant. And so, do I do my piano song? Do I do a reggae song? In how should it sound? How do I want to be, perceived and things like that? So all of those things have to be written down. I think that's the main thing for me, especially as a Christian. I don't know for other people, but as a Christian, I think it's very important, because your music is, every time you're singing, you're pouring out something. So it's very important. Pastor G the other day, funny enough, said he was talking about something, and then he says this statement, because I don't want to reveal something that I'm not supposed to reveal, but he says, I'm just going to talk to God about it and see what song I'm supposed to do. And, and he's like, how old? I don't know how many albums he's put out already so far in his life. And he's still going back to go, okay, should I do this song? What song should I do now? You understand what I mean? So it's very important that you have it written down, because you will forget. I think that's my main thing. Write the vision down, put it down, give somebody else. If especially if your character, always, know yourself more than anybody else. But if you need to have the people that you have praying with you, or your prayer partners, or your mom, or your sister, whoever, have somebody who is that person who's going to carry it for you, who's going to come and remind you, okay, here you've gone off. Okay, here, should you be doing this? Do you need to be doing this? Because we need to make sure we're always in the will. For us, it's not that simple. You can't just do anything you want, unfortunately. You can, but it won't succeed as well as when you're just in the will. We already know that part. So it's very important that you either write it down, which is my main thing, have it written down all the time. As you edit, as the years go by, you always add to it, but have it written down, or have somebody who's going to be the one who's reminding, whether it's your husband, your little sister, your grandmother, whoever it is, your pastor, whoever it is, have the vision be something that you can refer to all the time.
Thank you so much for that. We're like you said, so many nuggets coming out of that. Write it down as a constant reminder. When something is written, I always say, once you can see it, you can believe it. And once you can believe it, you can do it. So having it written down is very vital. And like you said, every single time you sing, you're pouring out. So it's more than just the words. It's more than just a beat. You're actually pouring out onto the lives of others. And as you mentioned, Amapiano, I want us to get into a really quick controversial topic. And this is where anyone can speak at any time. But we've seen definitely in the past 2-3 years a rise in secular artists doing gospel songs. So I'm referring to the Kanye West, the Nicki Minaj's, the Justin Bieber's, who are now doing gospel songs, even if it's not reflected in their lives. And I'm just going to leave it at that and say, what is your take when it comes to that happening? And I don't even want to call anyone out, but if you, would you like to go ahead, Nicole? Go ahead.
Very controversial one, and I think ultimately it boils down to one's conviction. The truth is, and it's an unfortunate truth, that we have those we deem to be born again, ministering the word, yet living totally different to that. And so then the question boils down to, how different are we if we live separate lives from that which we minister? How different then are we to a secular artist that decides to tap in to the gospel industry? So in as much as, for me, it's like saying, and I challenge a lot of artists for this, gospel artists, I actually equate it to when I receive an invitation as in my capacity as a vocalist in an altar that is not is not that of Christ. If I will go to a so-called false prophetic church and claim that I'll win souls, when I know very well that that is not an altar built for me. I compromise myself in the process. And let's be realistic. It's never about the fact that I want to go minister more than it is my gift and honoring my gift. And so where am I getting at with this? We still have ministers, which we would deem born again, ministering, and we're almost happy because we believe, look, these are born again Christians. But at the end of the day, their lives are not any different to those of secular artists.
There it is.
And so I think at the end of the day, it leaves the baton with me, the listener, the one who is ministered to by that music. Is that the person? Is that the vessel I want to be ministered to by? Is it really having an impact in my life? And if it is, what impact is it having in my life? is that what I want to listen to? And so basically what I'm saying is it really just depends on the one listening on the other end.
Yeah, thank you. That I can't actually say thank you, and I can't say that I support or disagree. I think that is a great opinion that you have brought forward. I'd like to just, before I hand over to Godfrey, I feel like, Arnold, there's something that you'd like to say.
No, not really. I just wanted to say that I think as Christians we need to start understanding the role of art within the kingdom. And I use the word kingdom very intentionally there, because we have to understand who we are, number one, and how we impact the world. Because a lot of times we have focused on the wrong thing. And let me explain. What is music in the context of the kingdom? Music is a touch point, it's an access point, right? It's an access point to something, right? So music is a touch point. Touch point or access point simply means a point of which people can access something. Let's take that, let's put it over here. We're going to connect it in a bit. Let's study Jesus' ministry for quite a bit and understand how he was doing things. Where was Jesus? A lot of the times we learn about Jesus, where is he? What is he doing? He's in the marketplace. He's with the multitudes. He's by the river. He is somewhere. We only have a few times he's actually in the synagogue, in the church, right? Here's the punchline. The punchline is this. The reason why you have a Nicki Minaj, you have a Kanye West, you have all these secular artists now becoming touch points in the world, because we have taken gospel music and we have taken and we have placed it in the church. That's not where we need the touch point. This is not where we need the touch point. The touch point is supposed to be in the marketplace. Jesus, for him to have conversation with Zacchaeus and say, Zacchaeus, come down. I want to eat at your house, right? Do you know what that means? He was in the marketplace. He was where the sinners are. For Zacchaeus to then say, I want to see this man. I want to know what he's about. And then Jesus connects with him and say, I want to eat at your house. What that simply means is, as Christians, we need to start becoming influential in impacting the world through art, through all these things, and understand what it is. They're just touch points for us to display the kingdom culture in the earth. That's what it is, right? So gospel music, guys, is not for Christians alone, right? It's for us so that it can be a touch point for people to experience the kingdom culture that we carry as Christians. So is Kanye West, what we should be worried about is whether or not Kanye West is doing gospel music. Is after his music becomes a touch point, then what? That's what we should be worried about, right? Because if we're not worried about that, two things are going to happen, right? Because after the people access or touch the message, whatever that message is, they then have access to some. It's like a secular record. A secular record, when someone sings, shake that, move that, do that, that's a touch point. And the touch point then gives them access to the world where they can practice that within their world, right? So after people access Kanye West, the question we should be asking is, what's next? What's next? Thank you, Kanye West, for becoming a touch point, for using your platform and a lot of that. But what's next? Is he then going to display the kingdom culture in the earth? Is he going to impact the world with the kingdom culture? Does he even know what the kingdom culture is?
Yeah. Yeah.
right? So,
Yeah.
which is then comes to the point where we then say, this is why it's important that as Christians, I'm going to refer to Vuyo. So, the first time I ever heard a Vuyo Brown song in my life, I was driving in a car. Captain Awesome, a guy who was doing the midday show at that time, was playing this record. I had no idea it's a gospel song. And I was like, who's that? I called Captain Awesome. I was like, who's that? Which is 2 Hours. Like, it's a song called 2 Hours, but I'm like, who did that song? Called Vuyo Brown. Then I asked then my Ndebele friends, and they tell me that, yo, it's actually a gospel song, right? I'm like, this is over the top amazing. Do you know what it was? It's playing on a secular station. That song was a touch point. Then we look up Vuyo Brown. What's Vuyo Brown doing? Vuyo Brown is impacting the world with the kingdom culture, right?
Yeah.
So the question we should be asking is whether or not Kanye West should do secular music or Nicki Minaj. They can do all the music for all we care about. But after they do it, it's now a touch point. What's next?
Yeah.
Because this is the only touch point some other people could ever had access to.
True.
Mhm.
True. Yeah.
Yes. So what are we doing as Christians, as people who are in the kingdom, to make sure that the kingdom culture then permeates and impacts people to such an extent that Kanye West doesn't do it just from a I want to do a gospel song, but there's the impact that goes with that as well.
Yeah. Thank you so much for that, Arnold. And I agree with you 100% with what you're saying, that we have a responsibility to carry it on. After the song has been heard and people are posting about it on their statuses, what are you commenting? Are you trying to find out, how their lives are, how to impact their lives, how to lead them into this godly lifestyle or onto this path of that we know and we've been raised to live by? And I mean, I just want to be a devil's advocate before I pass it over to Vuyo and say there's also the point of recognition, artists being recognized. And recently Kanye won the Gospel Artist of the Year award. And frankly, I was appalled by it because, you've got your Travis Greens, you've got your Tasha Cobbs and all the others who have been working their whole lives for an award or for recognition like that. And I know that the only recognition that really counts is that of God. But then there is, this earthly recognition of being awarded for your efforts. And so what is your take on that, Vuyo? What is your take on the whole aspect as a whole, as an artist yourself?
Yeah. So, when first before, because I haven't said this, I love So Profound. I love Luko, and I haven't said this whole time. I don't know why, because I'm learning so much. But I love that, what my brother said just now. Every single thing he said, because I think he took most of my points. But Christians don't own gospel music. One, it's a genre, it's a sound. And it's a genre, so it's anybody can do it anytime, whenever they feel like it, they can. It's their thing anyway, right? But the conversations that we are having, that we had after Kanye West did it or when Snoop Dogg did it, are the wrong conversations, because that's the challenge. It should make you angry, it should make us angry, because where are we? You understand what I mean? So I say 2 or 3. 3, we don't know the plans that God has for us. We don't know the plans that God had for Kanye. We don't know why. We don't know where we were not there. But all I know is that I like that he did that. I like it when they do that, because there are people that we get to think about or, realize or be concerned, or I don't know, whatever it is that takes them to a place where they consider God, because Kanye decided, oh, I'm going to be about Jesus right now. There's somebody that needed, there's somebody who was never going to hear Travis Green. There's somebody, I literally know people who can't stand gospel music. When I first released when I released my first album, I remember there are a few people who were coming on listening and they were like, what is it about your songs that makes my son does not like gospel music? Hambala church, I go with him to church. I take him to church all the time. I give him this music, I give him that music, but he doesn't. And that's my fourth point, is that everybody has their place. Everybody has their time. God works. God is so mysterious, and that's the fun side about it. That's really fun about him. But also the other side that we as Christians forget is that we think we know everything. We have all the answers to
The wisdom.
so many things that people want to know. But God knows. There are people. I'll repeat this again. There are people who are never going to think about Jesus unless Kanye started doing his stuff and his dance, whatever people were calling it. Kanye's doing it, I'm going to do it because he is culture. He is part of a culture. And there are people that follow him religiously. Now, this person who used to call himself, how do you pronounce how he used to call himself?
Jesus.
You understand? And these people are now going, oh, wait, he's no longer God himself. He's no longer calling himself a God, but he's now acknowledging God. Okay, they're going to think about that. Snoop Dogg, of all people, with his weed, you get where I'm going with this. But there are people who are never going to consider God unless these people did. We don't know why. We were not there. God will use a stone to turn somebody to praise him if he wants to. It's his creation. We are just in it. We don't know why. So the conversations that we were having about that, around that, were the wrong conversations. We should be asking ourselves, why are we not out there? We should be out there. If you need... Okay, let me stop here. Whatever you need to do, please go out there.
Go deeper.
If you need to do a song with, what's his name? Jerusalem guy. If you need to do a song with him so that it gets to Italy and someone is dancing to and just doing a dance challenge, doesn't even know they're dancing to a gospel song or to a hymn, and then someone explains it to me, like, oh, okay. If you need to do that, do that. If it's not for you, stay in the will, stay in your lane. But if you need to do that, go out there and do that, because we should be out there, not in I smiled so hard. I wish my camera was on when he said that gospel music is not for the church. No, there are people who are supposed to, the worship team is already there. Our music is supposed to be out there. They're supposed to know it. That's why we're going to record songs, to put them out there so that people come and want to go, who is she talking about? She's saying she's in love. How is she in love? With who? With Jesus Christ? What? I heard he's boring. No, he's not boring. Church music is not boring. Church music is fun. It's whoever needs whatever, however it's packaged and however they need to hear it. Those are the people that need Christ. So Kanye beat us to it. We should be thanking him, or we should be praising him. We should be praising God for him. That's what we should have done. Gotten into tongues, riba baba. Thank you, God, for Kanye West. Thank you, God, that you make Snoop Dogg do that, whatever the plan was. Even if they're doing it for their own glory, it still came to Jesus some way, somehow. Because one person said, okay, you know what? I haven't been to church in a very long time. Now Kanye is going, I have to go.
Thank you so much for that, Vuyo. I think conversations are meant to challenge. And so, some of us who came in here with, I've never listened to Kanye's gospel album because I don't know, there's something in my spirit just doesn't allow me to listen to Kanye and just raise my hands and praise Jesus. Because like you said, he called himself Jesus. And so I guess it's a failure of judgment on my part as well. But then I guess also as individuals, we have to know what conviction we each face. There's people who can listen to it and really praise and worship. And then there's others like us who are listening, and in the background, we're just... We're glitching a little bit,
Because
when
it's
it
not
says the
for
number
you.
you have dialed is not available. The systems are not working when it's happening. Godfrey, I see your hand. Trust me, I'm coming to you right away. It's just Luca and Arnold's hand. I think they want to refer to what has just been said. So I'm just going to let them speak quickly. Luca, you first.
Yeah, I want to say this, Alma. Ultimately, if and when we fail in our mandate, and I think this is really what I'm deducing, if and when we fail in our mandate to go out there, somebody else is going to do it for us, and we're basically caught sleeping. That's what it is. It's at the end of the day, if a secular person or a person like we're saying, who once proclaimed themselves as a Jesus, if they then decide to go out and start singing gospel song, exactly what she's saying, we don't own gospel. It's literally just the good message. And music is music at the end of the day. Hence, we've got all these genres in the gospel music. But I hope this challenges us as well as creatives in the gospel space to say, if we're not doing the work, the circular artists are going to go out there and do it
for us. Yeah.
That is our failure, and we should take responsibility there.
So
Travis Green, sorry, but you failed in stepping up.
Yo, it's a painful truth. Arnold.
I was gonna say that, for example, people were mad that Kanye was calling himself Jesus. Well, the important part about Jesus' name is not the name Jesus, it's Christ. That's important. Anyone can be called Jesus, guys. Heck, I might even name my firstborn son when I finally have him, God willing, Jesus. But it's not the Jesus that's important, it's the Christ that's important, right? Which already shows us that here we are as Christians gathering in our special corners, debating the nuances. Guess what the folks out there are doing? They're doing the work. They're impacting culture. They are, I was shocked. I've got an 8-year-old niece who can sing the Chainsmokers, Katy Perry, all these Nigerian songs, Jerusalem, for crying out loud. I'm like, what is this?
Yeah.
Do you know what that just means? These people are impacting the culture. The question we should be asking ourselves, how can we impact culture with our message? Because that's what Jesus did. Jesus came to impact the culture, that he had multitudes following him. Guy, let me show you how this guy called Jesus was. He was so serious that people would rather be hungry gathering around him than and not miss a word than actually go home and get food. This is how much he disrupted the culture. And guess where the Pharisees were and what they were doing? They were debating the nuances. They were debating why is he calling himself Jesus. They were debating the little things.
Sure.
And once Jesus was out there, oh my goodness, impacting the culture.
Yeah.
What?
Yeah.
How can we not get it, guys? How? But what do I know?
quite a lot, Arnold. And I mean, what we've definitely seen happen in the world around us is just the change in what we knew as gospel music. I mean, I was raised in a Presbyterian church where we sang from the church hymnary. You know, those hymns that are very hymny, and there's only one way of singing them. And now we've got trap gospel, rap gospel, reggae gospel, flipping cowboy gospel. We've literally got all different genres of gospel that you could ever imagine at the tip of our finger, available to us at our fingertips, because just the idea of gospel music is growing. And it's a good thing because people are impacting culture. Yes, Profound.
So John 3:16, for God so loved the world, for the right thing, right? In the beginning, God created the heaven and the earth. The earth is the Lord's and its fullness thereof. So the earth is the hardware, right? The world is the operating system, right? So for God so loved the earth's operating system that he sent his son to die for. So we are called so that we can impact the world. What is the world? The world is systems. It's how things work within this world. That's why we have to redeem the culture.
Sure. Hey, if you are taking notes, your notebook should be full by now, because these are just constant words of wisdom. Yes, Godfrey.
Good evening, good people. Thank you very much, Miss Akob. I wanted to just highlight, just speaking to the question you had asked the panelists. Whenever you listen to a song, I think there are two key elements at least, right? The song itself and the artist presenting the song. And of course, we can say then the third element is the listener. So with the secular artist or gospel artist doing the song, that becomes a conversation on the artist. That's when you zoom in or double click on the artist. But I would say when it comes to gospel, what is known as gospel music or Christian music, what is actually important is the message and not the messenger. Especially, in fact, any song, I would say, a lot of the times the most bearing thing about a song is the message and not particularly the messenger. And so whether it comes through dubious means or not, the work of the Lord is done if a song is identified as a gospel song or a Christian song. The same, and I'll use a bit of a dramatic example, which I can't say confidently that I saw it in the Bible or I read it as a story, but you will find instances where a peculiar event takes place in a church, whether it's supernatural, spiritual, or just beyond anything you could fathom, right? You may then question the whys and the hows it came about, but at the end of the day, you may find that someone has given their life to the Lord. The work of the Lord has been done, right? So if we tend to be so pedantic about the how too often, sometimes we end up missing on the miracle. You know, in fact, miracles step out of logic. Miracles step out of the norm. And so, yeah, the miracles can happen through the most unlikely artists. If it's a message that redeems, a message that restores, a message that reconciles, a message that encourages, being shared by an unusual artist or an unconventional messenger. So yeah, I think I just want to highlight that specifically when it comes to the Christian song or the gospel song, the message is more important than the messenger. And lastly, I think it also just reiterates something that was said about genres. And it is true that we need to understand that facet of genres as Christians, as artists altogether. That genres are vehicles. And again, a message can be carried through any type of vehicle. The point is to get from point A to point B. So the gospel message can be carried through hip hop, through kwaito, through trap, through the pianos. I'm a piano if you missed the reference. So for me, that's actually a lot more exciting. I mean, before this session started, we were listening to Afro gospel, right? I mean, honestly, if it's as simple as that, then I think we need to be more conscious of the message. I wouldn't say, though, just lastly, I wouldn't say that we must necessarily become reckless about collaborations or almost not as vigilant about collaborations, because there's also another facet of it where agreement is important, right? And so when someone spoke about conviction, how can two walk together unless they agree? So this artist that you're collaborating with, what exactly are you agreeing on? If it's not the message, at least. So that's something to note. So some caution needs to be exercised. That's the long and short of it in the collaborations that we have, because collaboration, there is an element of agreement. How expansive is it? Yeah, I'll rest there.
Thank you very much for that, Godfrey. I think as Christians, especially this whole idea of it is the message and not the messenger, we tend to think that whoever is pouring into us has to be better than us. And that goes through with music, with church. You want to know that your pastor, whoever is pouring into you, is better than you. And so we get shocked by the idea that these people are human beings as well, and they fall. And we see a lot of Christians struggling when a pastor falls or when a musician falls, because it's like, you're supposed to be better than me. But at the end of the day, we are human beings and we are sinners in nature. Yes, Luco, you wanted to say something.
I just want to, hopefully I'll be as quick as possible, touch on the impracticality of this discussion we're having in terms of broadcast. I want to make it very clear, I don't know anywhere else. I don't know. I've worked for Christian radio stations for the past 10 to 11 years. And it is very impractical to say, we are going to play your music because it is gospel despite the life you lead. I want to note that I'm sitting with a 4-page document in front of me that I still need to really go through. And the risk with it right now is a listener has taken their time. They've written a 4-page email to note every single error they could have found, every single, I mean, from music to advert to so basically what I'm going at here is as much as we can simply say anybody else can minister, when it comes to broadcasting in the plus 11 years I've done radio, it is not practical for us to play that music. And I want to make note of this because I want to go back to Godfrey's issue of collaborations. For instance, we could not play Nomcebo's song Jerusalem. We could not. We could not playlist the song. At a point where we decided to sneak it in, we could only do it through YouTube. Why? Because we are dealing with a people, which is us, the born again, who will take us to task. Should they send this 4-page email, I don't respond to it, or my manager does not respond to it. The next step is ICASA. Should it get to ICASA and the tribunal, we are in trouble. And so, like you're saying, I want to warn you guys as creatives, if you're looking to work, do not overlook the issue of lifestyle, because if it should come before the Christian listenership, your music will not make it unless you only take it to secular radios.
Thank you so much for that, Luko. Profound. I think that's going to be my favorite word from this whole conversation, without doing any marketing for you. So profound. And so let's bring this conversation back to the journey of a creative, as we round off and as we bring the conversation to an end. I think one thing that is really prevalent to me, especially as a young person who's starting to realize that I'm a creative, first of all, branding yourself as a creative is a conversation on its own, because there's a lot of things there's like a tick box that you need to tick to show that I'm indeed a creative. But that aside, when it comes to realizing your calling, your purpose as a creative, is it that you had a dream and Galoko, Jesus himself was in your dream telling you that, you will go forth and be a radio broadcaster, or you will go forth and produce music for me? So what I want to know from all of you, and this is just as you round off your conversation as well, how did you know? How did you know that this is what you were supposed to do? Is it something that since you were a little child, you always knew that you were supposed to speak? Is it something that came to you because you had an encounter with someone? Is it something that a pastor prayed over you and you realized this dream? Because what we don't realize as creatives is there's so many ways for you to recognize your goal or your calling as a creative. So I want to find out what led to you knowing that this was your calling. I'm going to start with So Profound, then I'm going to go to Luko, and then Vuyo, straight after the other.
You can only connect the dots looking backwards. So the story always makes sense when you look back at it. In my case, now that I look back at it, I cannot say, if you told me when I was 16 after my O levels that I was going to be an artist, I would have said, you're joking. Because at the time the goal was to become an engineer, was to pursue the science subjects and a lot of that. Studied that throughout A level, and then something started to change. I started to discover my gifting. So my gifting, I knew it was my gifting was of that of it's an oratory gift. It's an oratory gifting. I connect through words, through speaking. I didn't know what that was, right? So tried to be a rapper at some point with my friends after our A-level break, and I just didn't connect with it. Then finally I watched Police State Poet and Flowchart perform at the Manenberg doing spoken word poetry, and for the first time I was like, aha, that's it. I like that. I also want to connect with people like that. but the desire to connect was not coming from was not coming from a place of that's what I want to do. It was coming from a place of where the gifting was starting to demand of me that I I start to exercise the gift, because we always find ourselves in certain places where our gifting is exercised. There's a reason why there's a guy who would spend time on the racetrack, but there was a guy that's in the same stream. There's a guy who's spending time in the music room because it speaks to
Mhm.
people differently, and you're trying
Mm.
to find your gifting. So in my case, now that I look back at it, even when I was 5, uh, 6, when we were doing the infants play, I opted for the role of the narrator. Even in school or whatever it is, I always opted for the chance to say something,
Mhm.
to connect through words, and a lot of that. So fast forward now, years later, uh, I have become an artist. I'm a spoken word artist. I'm a content producer, radio, television, all these amazing things. I always used to think that they are different things that I'm doing. Actually, no, I'm doing the same thing, just
Yeah.
different platforms. Uh,
Mhm.
if it's right, I'm doing the same thing. I'm telling stories throughout, and I'm
Mhm.
using my oratory gift to connect.
Yeah.
However, as a Christian now, so that's the gift. But you can only create from who you are. So when I started to want to write spoken word poetry after watching PSP and Flowchart perform, I started to write very Christian rhymes. Like I started to write about Christ and what he was to my life, and a lot of that. That came naturally to me because that's who I am,
Mhm.
right? So if you create from who you are, you from the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaks. So you create from who you are. So your heart is who you are, right? In essence,
Mhm.
right? So who am I? I'm Arnold. Who's Arnold? Born again believer. I believe uh I'm a believer, basically, right? So if I'm a believer, I create from who I am. So it was natural for me to then start creating, uh, being a Christian, and a lot of that. So it's not something I had to work through. It was just finding my area of gifting and then expressing from who I am.
Mm.
So,
Mm.
uh, so that's how it compounds. But of course, it can only then make sense when you look back at it, why you love the things you do and why you do the things you do. In my case, that is the case. It was literally just my gifting and figuring it out. And from my gifting, it was creating from who I am, and creating from who I am. That becomes
Mm.
it's a series of events that then it's a ripple effect.
Thank you so much for that, Arnold. You can only create from who you are. So who are you? Moving over to you, Luko. You are muted.
Technology co-opted some of
Yeah,
us.
don't worry.
But but just to touch on something that Arnold actually spoke of, that we can only look back and trace to some of these things. I think if you told me when I was younger, I'd probably be like, oh, whatever. I've never been a radio person. I was never excited about radio. I was not even a radio listener. I have an older brother who can only study while listening to radio. And I never even understood that. I mean, he's an
Mm.
avid radio lover. To this very day, I am away from East London. He listens to Link FM 24/7 to this very day. And so for me, that was never me. That was never me. But if I look back, I've always just done public speaking. I remember our move to East London from Butterworth in the Eastern Cape was obviously through protection. Our family was in danger. And in primary, I'd always just wanted to speak, public speaking. But the unfortunate thing was my name had to be hidden because, hey,
Mm.
protection, that's exactly how we'd
Mhm.
got in there. But I still did my public speaking. Obviously, I couldn't go far enough because, hey,
Mhm.
I could not exit the school. Otherwise, my identity would have to be revealed ultimately. And I did it right until high school. Eventually, obviously, the guys were arrested and I could be free for the first time. But I mean, even from that point, I then did not know what to do with the gift. For me, honestly, getting into radio was by chance. I was studying something totally different to it. I was actually playing around on Facebook and I left my number, got a call back. I was like, oh. And the only reason why I went to that interview is because I did not want to be an embarrassment. The gentleman who had called is actually somebody that I knew personally. So I thought to myself, let me just go to this interview.
Yeah.
I ended up going. And I guess God had a bigger plan for me. I mean, I honestly never even did anything to do with radio. I got my first legal qualification, not radio. But I'm still there. And I have to say, one of the things that's really kept me is I think Arnold will actually agree with me on this. I always say this. The beauty of radio is how you can have an impact in one person's life. You will leave your house feeling the worst. One word and you change somebody's life. Yet you're feeling the worst. And at that moment, you change somebody's life, and that automatically changes your life as well. So for me, I think I fell in love. I grew in love with broadcasting, as opposed to knowing from the very beginning that was something I was meant to do. I only grew into it. And I have to say, even when I think of going out and ultimately practicing and finishing my LLB, I'm thinking to myself, but what will I be without radio? I still see myself doing it on weekends even.
Yeah. Thanks for that, Luko. You can grow into your dream. I absolutely love that. And Vuyo?
Well, mine is definitely the same. I hate that I have to speak last because they would have said so many things that I'm gonna say. but it's definitely the same. I was always that person. Everything I do for me is either an extension of my character or it's something that I already was doing. But when it comes to music, it was definitely something I used to annoy people about. Music and performing was, I would watch stuff and get home and want everyone to do it with me. Do you remember that? Do you remember this? They want us to sing and I want everyone around me to sing. I've been hosting talent shows since I was, grade something, and I always wanted to dance in front of people. I'd always have break time, lunch time, wherever I was, I have people around me and I'm dancing for them and just to entertain, So it's something that I always wanted to do as a kid, but it wasn't something I was going to pursue because I wanted to go study law and help people. So that was the other side, because I'm from an academic family. So it wasn't something that I didn't really grow up with my parents as supportive as they were. It wasn't something that was realistic for them. So it's only when God directed me to it and said, what he said, and that basically it was just, this is what you're supposed to be doing. This is what I want you to do. If he hadn't said that, or if he hadn't, if I did all these people around me at the time that, I'm praying with and, have someone who's mentoring me, who can speak into my life and speak God's direct word to me and have him in specific times and so many moments speak to me directly about it so clearly, I wouldn't have done it, because I struggle with things that are not, what I call meaningless. And so as much as I used to love music and writing and all of that, and I was always writing about something. I mean, as a teenager, I was writing about suicide. I'll write about anything that I'm feeling. As long as I'm feeling it, I'll write it, but if it wasn't going to have meaning, I wasn't going to do it. So it's only when he then said that he would want me to do this and showed me so many things that I'm yet to even experience and see. It's the only reason I keep doing this. Otherwise, when he stops speaking, I'll probably stop and move on to something else. But for me, it was always something that I had in me, that I always want to do music. So I want to say easy for me. It's not something I struggle with since I was a kid. And so, I understood things that I shouldn't have understood as a kid. And so it makes sense that I'm doing it now, So, yeah.
Thank you so much, Vuyo. In fact, thank you to every single panelist who has been here today. Luko, for your compassionate words of wisdom, Arnold, for being so profound, and Vuyo for speaking from a place of passion. This has been such an enriching conversation that we've had. And thank you to New Rivers Creative for organizing this amazing global weekend. We're going to be doing this again tomorrow at 8 p.m. So we'd like to see everyone hit back, because today we got lots of nuggets. Tomorrow we'll get even more. So thank you for staying with us all the way till this time, even though we did go a little bit over time. I'm sorry, there were just some questions that needed to be answered. So we went over time, but it was a valuable overtime. And I'm not even angry. Okay, I'll apologize to the organizers, but I'm not even mad. I'm going to hand over to Mufaro just to close up the event. Thanks so much.